I like to say that I'm probably more proud of all the acquisitions that we haven't done than the ones that we've done.
Welcome to the Bold Brand Show. If you're in the AEC industry and want to grow your firm, we're sharing exactly how bold and innovative firms win more. The sad truth is, most firms that are struggling in the AEC industry are still doing things the way we've always done them. But this show is about finding a better way. I'm your host and founder of Bold Brand, Josh Miles. I'm a published author, veteran of the TEDx stage, and a brand strategist with over 25 years of experience. But my superpower is my focus on AEC firms to understand how branding and marketing in the professional services industries is wildly different than for retail brands like Apple, Amazon, or Starbucks. So in this podcast, we're going deep with AEC firm leaders, marketers, and innovators in the AEC industry. We'll focus on the hottest topics and trends in AEC to uncover the growth secrets of the most successful firms and how firms can create lasting legacies and perhaps what the future has in store. Today's show is brought to you by Open Asset. AEC pursuits are more competitive than ever, and the best firms know it's not just about what you say, but what you show. In fact, 72% of AEC marketers agree visual content is the key to winning work. And that's where Open Asset comes in. It's the leading smart digital asset management platform built for AEC firms. With AI-powered tools for writing, searching, and tagging all your projects and files, it's easier than ever to tell your firm's unique story through visual content. And because Open Asset integrates with top AEC tools, your project data and marketing content stay connected every step of the way. Ready to see how Open Asset will transform your pursuit workflows? Bold Brand Show listeners get 1 month free. Visit pages.openasset.com/bold to learn more. Special thank you to Open Asset. I've got a special deal to share with you from my friends at BizNow. I regularly hit up BizNow events here in Denver, and honestly, they're my go-to for networking in commercial real estate and AEC. Each month, they pull together these great panels with heavy-hitting speakers who actually know what's happening right now in different markets. Not just theory, but real deals and trends. What's cool is they're not just a Denver thing. They run these events across the country. So if you're looking to stay on top of market shifts or want to connect with people making moves in CRE, it's worth checking out. If you're interested, check out BizNow. That's BISNOW.com/events to see what's coming up. You can use the code BOLD, that's BOLD, when you register to save 15% on your ticket. Trust me, the connections you'll make are worth it. Special thank you to BizNow. On today's episode, we're chatting with the Executive Vice President and Chief Corporate Development Officer of Stantec, Bjorn Morisbak. Bjorn investigates opportunities for Stantec to grow both geographically and in capability. He oversees all aspects of strategic sourcing, execution, and integration in their acquisitions, aiming to deliver company growth that benefits their communities, clients, employees, and shareholders. During his time with Stantec, Bjorn has worked on well over 100 acquisitions, large and small, each broadening the company's depth and breadth of expertise. When not searching for acquisition prospects, Bjorn spends his time keeping himself physically active. He's a past Norwegian basketball champion, a Canadian biathlon champion, a regular competitor in triathlons and marathons. He's also the honorary consul for Norway in Northern Alberta, and he serves on the Business Advisory Council for his alma mater, the Alberta School of Business. Bjorn, welcome to the Bold Brand Show.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
So, even though you and I decided that we may or may not have actually met at a past AEC Advisors Conference a while ago, I was interviewing the CEO of Stantec for one of their videos. Definitely remember your face, though, as we were doing some photography. I just want to say a special thanks to my friend Jen Van Vliet for introducing us and connecting us for this conversation.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to be here. Thanks to Jen for suggesting it. I love talking about this. It is a small industry. There's very few degrees of separation, so you do run across people, and I think we took in some of the same audience there a year or two back.
Yes. Yeah, she and I were kind of brainstorming, and I said, I'd love to have somebody on from Stantec. And she said, well, what are you most interested in? And I said, well, the M&A activity is so incredibly intriguing to me. And she's like, well, then you got to talk to Bjorn. So I'm really glad that worked out. So on this show, we want to learn like what you're thinking about and challenges you've had and some of your boldest moves while at Stantec. Um, so I get excited about firms that are making bold moves and specifically, like I mentioned, M&A related, but maybe we could start off with why M&A has been so hot the past few years or decades in AEC specifically and Stantec's role in that position.
Yeah, look, I'm really fortunate, having been with the company now for it's 26 years this summer. And in various forms, been really involved in our M&A growth, and expansion as an organization, right? So I have a pretty long history in that, working with three great CEOs on growing and really evolving our business. So I'm really passionate about this, and it's been a strategy that Stantec's pursued for really 3 decades now, to become the firm that we are today. And it's a tool, right? Like to us, it's about constantly getting better as an organization. Serving our clients better, providing more opportunity to them, providing more opportunity to our staff, and also rewarding our shareholders for doing a good job. Including most of our employees.
Well, from my perspective, it just seems like somebody's getting absorbed or purchased by Stantec all the time. It feels like you guys are dominating the market, which is really interesting. What are some of the reasons why that has been so successful for you guys?
I think it starts with a compelling value proposition and us knowing what we want to do, right? And what we want to be. And then we've taken other partners on that journey. And we've been able to play in an environment that has had significant demand, and continues to have significant demand in terms of the outlook, that be the built environment, infrastructure, and environmental services. It's just fundamentally something that the world needs a lot of. It's also been, historically speaking, and still remains today, a highly fragmented industry. So it's almost like ripe for some level of consolidation, right? And that sounds very opportunistic, and it's just that's not really what I'm saying. It's just I'm just kind of painting a picture of the environment that we operate in. So it does provide an opportunity for somebody that has an ambition to go out and put together something that is better, right? And again, I come back to that better thing, and I'll probably say that a lot throughout our conversation. That's really what it's about. We just want to be a better version of ourselves, continually improving and continue evolving.
Well, I'm sure it's different every day, but tell us a little bit about your role in the acquisition process. I understand that you're helming that effort, but what does that look like?
Yeah. So as an organization, because we have been so active over the years, there's real benefit in having some continuity to it. And that's really what I've been fortunate enough to spend my time on, right? So I kind of oversee everything from the identification through the sourcing, the execution of purchase agreements, and also integration of the acquisition. So we have a continuum from the very beginning through to really truly integrating in the most wholesome sense into the Stantec organization. And that means that we can stay true to the promises we make up front, the value propositions that we jointly outline with the incoming companies, and make sure that the journey into the overall Stantec world is a good one. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure our listeners are familiar with sort of mergers and acquisitions broadly in terms of like, if you only have an office in Denver and you want to add a Chicago presence, it's way easier to, find a small firm in Chicago who's doing a thing that you want to do there and partner with them or bring them on as part of your organization. Um, I'm curious about for Stantec specifically, broadly speaking, what makes another firm attractive to you, or what variables might you be looking for in a firm to be acquired?
Yeah, it's also something that we've always like honed over time, right, and become very clear. on what we will do and won't do. And that's a really important part of our success. I like to say that I'm probably more proud of all the acquisitions that we haven't done than the ones that we've done. So we
Mm,
talked to hundreds of firms, thousands of firms over the years, and but as much as we've done quite a few acquisitions, it's a very small piece of the overall number of firms that we have conversations with. Um, so to me, there's really four criteria that's really important for a successful acquisition. First and foremost, you have to have a really good strategic fit. So, by bringing an organization into yours or combining with yours or acquiring a company, you need to have a compelling strategic fit that gives you something different. You can do more for your clients, or you can do it in more locations, or you can do something different. And there can be all kinds of different drivers for that, but it's really important that you jointly come up with that with the other organization. You also really got to carefully assess the cultural fit, and that's what everybody talks about,
mm,
right? And it's
mm-hmm.
a little sort of mysterious and maybe unclear, but it's really important. And in culture, it's about business practices. It's about people. It's how you do things. It's how you interact. It's how you communicate with people. All those things matter. So with those two things, you then got to develop a really good joint value proposition that works, right? It works strategically, and it works for the leadership and the people. Um, then you also need to have deal terms that work, right? So you got to come to a commercial agreement of some sort that has both a financial value associated with it and kind of memorializes how you're going to come together and what that looks like. So that's
Mm.
obviously important. Otherwise, there's no transaction, if you like.
Right.
And then the fourth thing that I think is often really underestimated is timing. And timing is really important in the sense that it has to be in the right time in the evolution of the firm being acquired, and it has to be the right time for us in the sense that it fits with our strategy, it fits with our other efforts that we got ongoing at the same time, and we can devote the right time, resources, and mind space to do this well because it doesn't happen by itself.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a bit of an art form, and executing it on in a way that is going to make it successful means that you got to commit to it and you got to have the right resources to support it.
I really loved what you said about being so proud of the deals that you didn't do. Um, for some of those would-be acquisitions, where do those most commonly, if there is a most common, fall off the rails, or how do you identify a bad fit?
Through interaction, right? So we identify that quite early. Like if we don't think the value proposition is strong enough, and it goes back to those factors, those four factors that I talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and we figure, this is not really ideal for us, or we feel this is not great for the firm we're talking to, we'll just say, look, that's fine. We'll just move on and we'll do something different, better for us, better for you. Um, so that happens really all along, and most of our decisions are done pretty early in that process. Once we sort of get to a point where we agree on all these things, we kind of formalize it in a letter of intent, and it's very rare for us to have things go sideways then. It could in a due diligence process, but I think
Oh, sure.
in our history, it's only happened twice. And those two examples are one, these were small firms, and they happen to be architectural firms for some reason. I think that's a bit of a
Mm.
coincidence. But one was where we found that the owner and his senior people just did not have good business practices to
Mm.
a point where they were unethical. And so we just couldn't see that as being compatible with us. And we had to have a
Sure.
conversation, but that didn't work. And we had one where during the process, they lost their number one client, which had over 50% of their revenues. So it's just a major
Oh,
change.
sure.
Yeah. So
Kind of
we do
changes
like,
the conversation a little bit.
yeah, it hit us, right? So that happens, but it's quite rare. And um, and again, it's not during the process that it goes sideways for us. It's up front where we sort of just spend time really kind of developing that value proposition and we don't think it's strong enough, or somebody else could have a better value proposition than us. And the last thing we want to do, for example, is to compete strictly on price and value, right? And that's why you really need to
Mm-hmm.
have all these things come together, uh, because it has to be a joint decision that makes sense for everybody involved, where everybody feels happy or equally unhappy, but still think it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
That's really where the magic spot is, right? So that's yeah, that's a huge part of our focus.
For our listeners, how many employees is Stantec? How many offices and employees are we looking at globally at this point?
Yeah, today, 32,000 employees, 400 offices. We actually just announced one acquisition this week that gives us a few other more offices in Ireland. So this is kind of our first foray meaningfully into Ireland. So we got 4 new offices there, a couple of hundred new colleagues, but that's not closed yet. And we also did last week a really cool acquisition in the US, where we announced that we're going to combine forces with Page, which is
Yeah,
a
that's
architecture and
huge. Yeah,
engineering firm.
congratulations.
Yeah, it's gonna make us a real market leader in the integrated A&E space in the US. It's a really, really, really cool deal. So with those, we'll be, closer to 34, I guess. And this is kind of what's happened, right? Like I joined this company when we were a lot less than 2,000 people. We're a Western Canadian firm
Mm.
primarily with a couple of little offices in the US and Eastern Canada. And we've sort of gradually expanded, diversified, grown, improved, and built ourselves into the organization and the brand that we are today.
My background is largely in branding, and so I think about these things a lot of times in terms of, you wave the magic wand 5 years from now, Page is now Stantec isn't a difficult thing to imagine. But how do you guys handle the strategy in terms of bridging the gap from day one to when they are fully under that brand name? Like, what is it a case by case basis, or is it, operating kind of under the umbrella for a little bit, or what's the most typical strategy for that?
Yeah, there's many different ways of doing this, and I know this is close to your passion, and it's been a really important part of our strategy. So we've taken a very deliberate approach, right? Like we're a single brand company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're Stantec. We operate as a single brand, and we transitioned all our acquisitions onto that single brand. And that's, I talked about the conversations up front about making sure that you have a cultural fit and you have a joint
Yeah.
value proposition of what you want to do. That's a big part of our conversation, right? And we often run into conversations around brand because it's a very passionate thing for a lot of people. Often we've dealt with founder-led firms. They got
Mm-hmm.
their name on the door,
Right.
or they've spent decades. Some of these firms are really, really old, like MWH, which we acquired, and was really our first global expansion
Mm-hmm.
of significance a few years back. You go back to their brand in the UK. I mean, it went back right to the foundations of engineering, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's that old. So there's a whole bunch of massive legacy in some of these brands. We believe in what we're building, though, and we believe that we're better together, and we have an organization that's based on collaboration, right? So we don't think you can do that operating as a whole bunch of disparate brands. So we look to fully integrate uh, our acquisitions to build something better, stronger, and that can ultimately be the number one brand in the world. I mean, that's the journey we're on in our space, right? And so we've been very successful with that, bringing people in. But that doesn't mean that we're not respectful to the legacy of the brands that we acquire. And it's a really, really important part for us is not like I guess we know what the end game is. The end game is we're one singular brand, but the journey to get there is critical. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something we customize and work with our different acquisition to go, how can we optimize that? How do we do that best? How do we use that brand transition to tell a story, right? to the market, to our clients, to our staff as to why we're doing this and why it's better, right? And again, it comes back to that value proposition and being true to yourselves and what you're trying to accomplish. And that's where you need like-minded people that are on that page. So you got to spend the time getting people to buy into that. We've had circumstances where that's kind of a reason for us not to do it, right? We get to a point where, oh, we're kind of interested in this, but we want to keep our brand. But then what does that tell us? If we acquire a firm, whatever size it is, but it needs to operate with a separate brand, what does that tell the rest of the organization?
Right.
So anyway, it's look, I'm not saying it's the one strategy. It's not necessarily the right strategy for everybody, but it is for us, right? And it's about knowing who we are and what we want to achieve and finding people that want to go on that journey with us.
Yeah. It's incredibly interesting. I mean, I was just thinking if we get the 34,000 employees of Stantec to all subscribe to this podcast, I think we'd be the number one AE show in the world overnight. But what I was actually thinking about was, so a lot of our listeners are in firms that are obviously smaller than you guys, from the mom and pop shop with a couple people in one office to the hundreds of employees kind of around the country and thousands around the world. Um, at what size do you think M&A makes sense for a firm for as a strategy?
Um, Look, it makes sense at all sizes, and I think that's proven out in the sense that that's kind of what's happening in the space right now. There's a lot of M&A activity going on, and it happens at all levels in terms of size, right? And I just saw an industry study today. It was our friends at AEC actually, that put out an update, and of all the firms surveyed, and they surveyed firms across the whole industry, roughly 50% say they plan to make an acquisition in the next year. Now, there's
Oh,
obviously a
interesting.
lot more that say they're going to do it than actually do it. So
Sure.
the ambition, so let's say half of that, so maybe 25% do. So, so clearly there's a lot of activity. It works for a lot of people. I will say though that it's risky, right? Because when you're smaller and you do an acquisition that is of any size, you take a big bet. It would be like us, the risk has gone down for us. So 32,000 people.
Sure.
If we did a firm half our size, it'd be a firm that was 15,000 people. If a 100-person firm does a 50-person firm, like it's still kind of the same risk, right?
Yeah.
If you get it wrong.
Hmm.
Um, I also think that, it's not something that is a bit of a part-time gig. I think you really need to know what you're doing, and you got to build expertise, and you got to build understanding, and you got to build resources, and you got to have the commitment to sort of really see it through. Like you can't just do it on a whim. There's lots of examples of things that don't go so well, right? And look, we've learned some lessons over the years too. Like we've honed our craft, right? Um,
Yeah. You know, what about thinking about in terms of competition? I sent you the notes in advance, so I know you know the joke. But was like on a long enough timeline, are all the firms going to be Stantec? But I'm just curious, like what your view on competition is, if that is healthy to have other big players in the market.
yeah, competition's always healthy, right? It just makes you sharper. And look, I think the industry is going to consolidate significantly for a number of reasons. I think that just makes sense in terms of servicing clients with broader, better skill sets, doing larger projects, serving the world's greatest problems. Like there's a whole bunch of drivers that mean that it makes sense to have some level of scale. The introduction of technology into our businesses too, and being able to invest in that and implement it at scale, like all those kind of things lend itself to it. But it's not going to be one firm, right? Like there's still going to be lots. It's going to take a lot of time for this to happen. There are many different business models, and there's competition from firms that are pretty similar to us. The big,
Hmm.
larger, multidisciplinary public firms, but all have their nuances and differences. So it's different in strategy a little bit, different in culture a bit, right? So it's different solutions for different people, and we'll attract different firms to join us just based on that strategic and cultural fit. And then there's other players in the space too. Because it's been such an attractive sector, you've increasingly seen financial sponsors move into the AEC space and take ownership stakes.
Hmm.
That's a slightly different business model. They're really about building something and then getting a return on it and then selling it on to somebody else. So it's a very different mindset and different model. But that's also competition, right? I do think, though, that our industry will evolve in a way where there will be some leading players. Well, there are some leading players, but increasingly so, right? So if you think at a parallel, if you think about the professional services like the management consulting accountancies, the big four kind of thing, the
Hmm.
WCs, KPMGs, that kind of thing, where they have global brands, where they're recognized for what they do. Our industry in some ways moving there too. It's not necessarily the big four, it might be the big three or five or six or whatever, right? But there's an
Sure.
opportunity there to build that truly global brand that have the capabilities to serve all the world's gnarliest problems, right? And there's lots of them as it comes to infrastructure, aging, and climate change, and resilience, and all that kind of thing. And who's better positioned to do that than firms in our space? And we'd like to be we'd like to be the best one. Okay?
Of course. Well, I know M&A isn't the only way that you guys add headcount. I'm sure you hire people at offices all the time and add bigger staff. But I'm curious what percentage of growth typically on a year over year basis M&A accounts for your growth.
Yeah, look, it'll vary a little bit year over year, but if you look at it sort of historically, I'd say roughly half is M&A and half is organic growth. We think that's probably a pretty healthy mix, actually. Now, they're not they're not disconnected, right? Like they're actually really, really connected because in my mind, good M&A acts as a real catalyst for organic growth, right? Because
Hmm.
you bring capabilities together and then you can kind of grow in the cracks. You see where you got to fill that out, where you can add to it. You might have new client relationships come in with the acquisitions, or you can take some of your clients, take their services, sell them to them. Right, so there's massive amount of organic growth opportunities that come out of these acquisitions, and that's I think truly the magic of what we've done over the years. It's thoughtfully putting those pieces together that just enables you to grow even more because it provides more opportunity, right? It's just more opportunity to our staff. Our clients see the capabilities that we add to them. And that goes back to that whole brand building thing too. It's just like it's a virtual cycle of just getting better and better and better. And in turn, you actually get bigger. So it is about getting better. And then bigger is just, it's an outcome, right? Because you're good at what you do.
Sure. Think about like as a generational question here, a generation from now, maybe when you and I are both retired, how do you think that the work that you're doing in M&A is going to impact that next generation of ownership, of leaders, and what the future of Stantec may look like because of what you guys are able to do today?
Um, Look, I think it's about building that better firm again. Like I actually think about that a lot, and this might be aging me. I start thinking about. I used to think, what can I do, right? And now I'm starting to think, well, now what do I need to do to make sure that this firm is left in the best hands and is
Yeah,
going to continue to thrive and grow. And I think what we're doing does that, right? Because as we grow and evolve and get better, we provide more and more opportunity for our people. And for the people that want to seize the opportunity has an incredible opportunity here at Stantec, right? Because we're kind of a bit of a perfect meritocracy, right? We bring people in from the acquisition. They might have come from different ownership models where the only way to get ahead was to become an owner, right? There's nothing wrong with being an owner, but you had to become an owner to do it. So you had to mortgage your house, you got to go in and you got to buy into the company, and then you got to wait 30 years to kind of get the benefits
right.
of that. And that's really good for some, but not necessarily for others. Um, we have the benefit of being able to incentivize and reward people and provide them opportunity based truly on merit. It's not on ownership stake or anything like that. Now, you can also be an owner in Stantec because we're a listed company. You can be as big an owner as you want, right?
Hmm.
And it's you can go in and out depending on how much you believe in your employer, right? Makes it a perfect liquid situation. So we have a lot to offer people in that regard. But I think the biggest thing is the kind of projects that we do, the locations that we do it in. We got people in Australia saying, I want to work in New York. So you go to New York, you work on projects there. We service global clients around the world. Because of the capabilities and expertise that we have everywhere, our people working on jobs can dig into our organization and find experts on whatever, right? Like I've been here 26 years. I still don't know everything we do. Like it's unbelievable in terms
Yeah.
of the technical skills that we have. So I just think we're the perfect organization for people with technical backgrounds, whether it be architects, whether it be engineers, whether it be environmental scientists, project managers, economists. Again, all these services are also blurring increasingly more and more to solve some of those, integrated global problems. And I think with the technical expertise and the skill sets, that's our foundation. We're perfectly positioned to
I think it's
solve
really
those problems.
interesting to be so broad when you think about how to position yourself in the marketplace and how you want the marketplace to see Stantec when you can be so broad and so deep in so many different things. Has that been a challenge corporately to figure out from a brand position or marketing standpoint, like how you differentiate and how you stand out uniquely?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Challenge, right? Well, it's both. It's a challenge and an opportunity, right? So if you look at kind of our purpose, our promise, our values, they're all aligned around better together, right? They're aligned around solving
Hmm.
the world's biggest problems. They're about collaboration. They're about doing the right things. They're about our people. It's all those things. But then you'll also have when you get into it, and this is kind of um, your expertise as well, you will get some conflicts and some inherent conflicts internally in the organization, right? And that
Sure.
you need to be sort of like a pretty big tent, right? Because you need to be able to incorporate and include a lot of different people, and that's one of the things I'm actually really proud about is what we've been able to do there. And a good example, I think, is we are the second largest architectural firm in North America, but we are also the largest integrated A&E practice, right? So we've integrated
Hmm.
architects and engineers working together, and that has a lot of complexity as it relates to brand. The perspectives and uh, um, uh, ambitions and thought processes and cultures not identical.
Hmm.
But we brought that together in a way that works really, really harmoniously. Not without friction. There's always issues there. But we've been able to work through that and actually build that consensus around what we're trying to achieve. And I'm incredibly proud of our people as to how we've done that. It's a big part of our strength, right? And you can think about it as most other large firms would be engineering firms. We're an integrated A&E. And think
Hmm.
about how much that design element adds to our culture and what we do. So there's all these little subtle things that become cultural differences between the different firms that we're very conscious of and really work to nurture and make ourselves better, right? So I like our diversity. Our diversity is our strength. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. Um, I think I'm a little biased because I also do video work, but I think video is a really great way to capture that culture and that diversity and show that to people and help other people get their arms around who you are and feel like they get to know you, even though they're just watching you on the screen. But uh, I'm curious if Stantec has looked at video as as a strategic effort in terms of like looking at other videos of other firms? Like, is that a good way to test the waters of what that other firm's culture is about, or if you think about video in other ways related to M&A?
No, no, videos actually, um, I think I'm very much increasingly a big part of our brand building, right? And as you get bigger in size too, it gets harder and harder to do everything in person. And so video and storytelling, um, and those kind of things are incredibly important to kind of continue to build and nurture that culture and bring new people into the organization and way of thinking, right? So we actually put out some pretty cool videos just recently. So I encourage people to go to our website to have a look at that. That really tells our story and where we are and the evolution of our organization and where we're going. And yeah, that's it's I think what you do is really useful for organizations like us, right?
Excellent. Well, we'll definitely get those links from you and your team, so we can drop those in the show notes so people can check out those videos as well after they watch this interview.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's I'm curious if there's anything in the industry that you'd like to see kind of the A&E industry, the AEC industry on the whole do differently, or what are some of the industry-wide challenges that you guys are trying to tackle right now, or maybe who is getting that right?
Um, well, I think the industry is doing really well, right? So you look at that, you sort of look at that in on all metrics, the industry is actually improving. So that's good. And there's
Hmm.
massive demand for our services and there's shortage of talent, right? So I think we're all constantly striving to do better. I think what this industry has done historically is undersold itself a little bit. I mean, that's the
Hmm.
classic issue with the
Sure.
AEC industry, right? Like we have some of the most competent, knowledgeable people there is, very well trained, very well educated, able to solve really complex problems. But we've been maybe too focused on solving the problems. Like it's in the engineer or the technical person's mind. It's like, I always want to solve the problem. We haven't probably been as commercially astute as an industry as maybe the lawyers have or the accountants or that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? So I do think we have an opportunity here to improve some of those things. I think the industry will also increasingly incorporate technology and AI. It'll increasingly probably blur the boundaries with services that are currently provided by consulting firms to again solve some of those big problems, right? And our advantage is we have that technical base. Like we really have the knowledge, right? At the end of the day, we can actually solve these problems
Mm-hmm.
because we know how
Right.
to do it. We can't we don't just consult on the big picture part of it. We can do that too and marry it with with the overall technical expertise. So in that I think there's just massive opportunity. I think there's great upside for our industry, right? I couldn't think of a better industry, quite frankly, to be in today. And I'd probably say that a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, too.
Yeah. Pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Um, before we wind down here and let you get back to taking over the world, this is your chance for your bold prediction for the future. So curious if there's anything that you see that's sort of coming down the pipeline that's a big thing that'll be next, or maybe hottest markets or hottest trends that you see happening right now.
Look, it's an interesting time, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot happening in the global environment right now. There's a tremendous amount of change. But again, I come back to us being so uniquely positioned and so versatile, so deep, uh, so diversified in terms of being able to solve problems. But we also need to evolve as an industry. And I think maybe the biggest thing there is I think we will see ourselves and some of our peers and competitors really evolve in ways that make us a true leader in terms of solving some of these great challenges that we have in the world, right? Whether it be local community issues around infrastructure, clean water, playgrounds that are safe for people, or be some of the gnarliest, more complicated problems like climate change and resilience and all those kind of things. It's not one thing, it's a lot. And that's why I love this industry. And that's where I think there's so much room for us to continue to grow, to continually get better and service our clients, provide opportunities to our employees and grow the value for our shareholders as we go forward. So um, we've grown to where we are today, Josh, slow and steady and deliberately and thoughtfully to put together a great firm. Um, we can take that and double it, right? The opportunity is there. We've come a long way. We've evolved a lot. We'll continue to evolve, and we'll just be better. So, just looking forward to the next few years. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think that's a great place to leave this. I could ask you questions about M&A and Stantec's growth for probably a couple more hours. So maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime next year or something. But before we let you go, Bjorn, please tell our listeners where they could learn a little bit more about you and more about Stantec as well.
Go to stantec.com. Well, we're a publicly traded company. We got a ton of information out there, be it information on us as a company, what we do, a lot of thought leadership. We got videos that explain a little bit about what we do, and so it's a great source for information. That's the beauty of the kind of nature of the firm that we are. And about myself, hey, hit me up on LinkedIn. You'll find me there and reach out. I love talking about this stuff. And so if anybody wants to chat about M&A or anything else you're interested in, I'm more than happy to connect.
Well, Bjorn, it was a pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Have a great one.
Thank you for joining us today on the Bold Brand Show. For all of today's show notes and links to our sponsors, head over to boldbrand.show. Be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter where I'll update you on the latest episodes and other exciting things happening at Bold Brand. If you liked today's episode, do me a favor and share this episode with a colleague. Over at boldbrand.show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can watch full versions of each episode and join the conversation by commenting below. The Bold Brand Show is produced by yours truly, Josh Miles, and is a product of Bold Brand LLC, a branding and video agency for AEC firms based in Denver, Colorado. Visit boldbrand.com to learn more, or hit that orange button up top to schedule a time to chat about your branding or video project. Catch us next time where we chat with another bold innovator in the AEC industry. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.